Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk today. My name is Steve Pearce, and I am an acoustic scientist and the AZFP product manager at ASL Environmental Sciences. Today I'm going to be highlighting a case study involving the AZFP. So this is bioacoustic monitoring of Arctic cod and zooplankton in the Canadian Beaufort Sea. Fairly straightforward presentation. I'm going to start by introducing ASL. Then I'll introduce the instrument that was used in the case study. Then we'll get the actual case study, and then that's it. Okay, so who are we and what do we do? ASL is a very small employee-owned company in Victoria, BC. We've been around since 1977. There are about 40 of us, not that many, and we've done a lot of projects since our inception, and many of them have been up north in high latitude environments. We do a few different things. We make products, we offer field services, and we offer consulting services. Our flagship product is the AZFP. This is typically deployed via bottom mooring. It can also be deployed via autonomous vehicles such as a glider, and lately we've seen some users deploy it via a pole mount for a mobile survey. We offer field services, so that includes deployment and recovery of the instrument. And we offer consulting services, which include acoustical data processing, and we have a remote sensing group, and we can do some current modeling as well. The different dots on the map indicate some of the locations of the projects that we've participated in. And actually, it's a bit of an old map, so we could do to update it. On to the instrument, the AZFP. The AZFP is a calibrated, scientific, multi-frequency, single-beam echo sounder. It can run autonomously for a long period of time. Typical is 12 months, can be longer, can be shorter, depending upon the way the instrument is configured. And the instrument, as I said, is calibrated, which facilitates measurement of backscatter on an absolute scale, not a relative scale, at each of the frequencies. This facilitates the use of the so-called dB differencing method, which allows researchers to discriminate one type of target from another in many cases. The instrument supports up to 4 different channels. These are the frequency combinations that we have available. And each channel is calibrated individually at the factory before the instrument ships. The calibration is fairly important, so it's worth talking about that, because that's what makes this a scientific echo sounder. So we follow a 2-part procedure. It begins in our small freshwater inside tank. We have some calibrated hydrophones, we have a calibrated secondary source, and we will mount the AZFP under test in the tank, transmit out of it, measure the strength of the signal that's been transmitted, then we'll transmit into the AZFP and characterize the receiver response. And then at this point, the instrument is considered calibrated. However, it's good to be sure. So then we have part 2 of the process, where we go to our larger freshwater tank. And here we use the standard tungsten carbide sphere method to verify the calibration. The frequency response as a function of the size of the tungsten carbide sphere, the target strength of the WC sphere is well characterized as a function of frequency. So for each of the channels in the instrument, we have a very simple pass-fail criterion. The measured target strength must be within 1 dB of the theoretical target strength. Many of our users work in high latitude environments, as you can see from this photo. Typically the instrument, as I mentioned, is deployed via bottom mooring, so it would be deployed in an upward looking orientation. However, that's not the only way to do it. Researchers in this case mounted the instrument into its deployment cage, stripped the floats off, tethered the instrument to the ice up above, and dunk the instrument in a downward-facing orientation. So the instrument can run autonomously off of its internal battery pack for a very long period of time. It's routine to see 12 months. 6 months is absolutely common, even when sampling quickly at a number of different frequencies. So researchers end up with a very large time series of data. This can be quite useful, as we'll see in subsequent slides. In this case, we've got 6 months of data represented as a data cube. These data were collected at 200 kilohertz in Saanich Inlet, which is very close to our offices. Here you can see the deal migration of zooplankton up to the surface during the night. And then when the sunlight hits, they go back down to the deeper depths. So again, this just highlights one of the main reasons that some researchers choose to use our instrument. It can run autonomously for a long period of time and record the data internally. Moving on to the case study. This is bioacoustic monitoring of Arctic cod and zooplankton in the Canadian Beaufort Sea. The Canadian Beaufort Sea Marine Ecosystem Assessment, CBSMEA, has the stated program goal of generating science advice for the co-management of the Beaufort Sea. Excuse me. Of particular importance in the area are key forage species, Arctic cod and copepod zooplankton. This is important feeding habitat for bowhead and beluga whales. So a question that my co-authors with DFO are attempting to answer is what drives forage species variability, and that's particularly distribution and biomass, especially in important feeding habitats such as Cape Bathurst. Now, in order to answer this question, the researchers require annual observations to see how the forage species vary both seasonally and also in response to environmental events, including ocean mixing and heat waves. For that reason, they've chosen an AZFP. This area is not easy to access. I'll show a picture of that in a subsequent slide, and the long endurance of the instrument will provide the necessary time series. Important to note in the area is that in recent years, there's been an increasing tendency toward downwelling events. Historically, upwelling events appeared to be more common, received more attention. However, since 2016, we are beginning to see more downwelling events. In order to study these, an AZFP instrument was deployed at 50 meters depth in the Cape Bathurst area. On this slide, there are two figures. The right-hand figure shows a map of the study area. It's been extensively sampled. The deployment location for this case study is marked by the star. I'm attempting to circle that with the laser pointer feature in PowerPoint. On the left-hand side of this slide is a diagram of the mooring that was deployed at that location. It's a fairly standard mooring, very common, especially for AZFPs. Flotation at the top. The instrument is mounted inside an inline cage, which is at a 15-degree tilt off vertical. It's collecting data at 38, 200, and 455 kilohertz. And below that, we have a pair of tandem acoustic releases. So what kind of data did we get? On this slide, we've got an image with 4 panels. This is showing an excerpt of data from summer 2018. On the top panel is the Bakun upwelling index that has been calculated. The takeaway here is positive numbers indicate an upwelling event, negative numbers indicate a downwelling event. Red lines have been added to this figure to relate these upwelling, downwelling events to the corresponding changes in the nautical area scattering coefficient. This is the NASC as observed at the instrument. In mid-July, on the going left to right on this figure, the first red line, mid-July, corresponding to this fairly transient downwelling event, we see a significant increase in the NASC at 38 and 200 kilohertz. Presumably, this corresponds to a concentration of a large group of Arctic cod that came into the area. Later on in the summer, this is mid-August, the second red line in the figure, there's a much longer duration downwelling event that follows an upwelling event. Associated with the upwelling event, we see another pair of increases, a pair of bumps, if you will, in the NASC at 38 and 200 kilohertz. However, following the downwelling event, there's a significant increase in the NASC at 455 kilohertz. Presumably, this corresponds to a concentration of zooplankton and or larval cod. We see something similar again, late August, early September, the third red line in this figure. There's a very significant increase in the 455 kilohertz NASC, presumably another concentration of zooplankton and or larval cod. So what do these data mean? For one thing, this points toward the study area having been a temporal hotspot, if you will, for marine mammal feeding during these events, during the times at which the concentrations of key forage species occurred in the area. And it's led my co-authors at DFO to develop a working hypothesis, which is that downwelling events create a concentration of zooplankton and larval cod, which can then be transported into local embayments such as Franklin Bay, thereby stocking these bays with these forage species, making these bays into important habitat that supports Arctic cod recruitments. Now, these data draw attention to the importance of downwelling events at Cape Bathurst, not just the importance of upwelling events, as has been previously understood. On the previous slide, an excerpt of data from only the summer of 2018 was shown. On this slide, we've got the complete time series, August 2017 through August 2018, showing the NASC values for all three frequencies. In the figure, we've got a number of different colors going on. These correspond to the different seasons, with red being summer, light blue being fall, etc. Also on the figures, the filled black circles correspond to upwelling events. The open black circles correspond to downwelling events. Key takeaways from this slide are that for all three frequencies, the NASC was significantly higher during the 34 downwelling events than it was during the 41 upwelling events. Another takeaway, despite the ice persistence into the well into 2018, which was much heavier compared to 2017, the NASC on all frequencies was higher in 2018. This underscores the importance of persistent monitoring in the area to understand how the ecosystem is responding. Key results from this study. NASC was significantly higher in summer 2018 than summer 2017, despite 2018 ice persistence. NASC, most notably, was significantly higher during downwelling events when compared to upwelling events, and this contrasts with the traditional understanding. This supports the working hypothesis that bays such as Franklin Bay are stocked after a downwelling event creates a concentration of zooplankton and Arctic cod larvae, and then coastal currents transport these into bays such as Franklin Bay, which would make that bay a great habitat for spawning and very important to Arctic cod recruitment. This underscores the importance of persistent monitoring, especially around Arctic cod habitat. And as a result, the research group has decided to get themselves some more equipment. That's the end of my talk. And with that, I would like to acknowledge the Inuvialuit Game Council for supporting this work. I would like to acknowledge my co-authors, especially those with DFO, for contributing this case study to the presentation. And I would like to thank you for making it all the way to the end of my pre-recorded talk. And I wish everybody well and stay safe.